Thanksgiving. The time for you and your family to get together for the one time of the year, remember why you hate them, and massively overeat on turkey, stuffing, and various other foods. However, this wasn't how Thanksgiving always was. At least I'd hope so, otherwise this is a very stupid holiday. But how does such a holiday come into being, and what is the history behind it? In this video, we'll be looking at the history of Thanksgiving. Before we get started, the holiday has a variety of controversy in origins and what it does actually represent. I won't be covering those controversies in this video, as it'd be something that would require a video unto itself, and one with significantly more detail to fully do justice. This is simply going to be a quick overview of the holiday's origins. The origins of Thanksgiving were largely a religious one, and had been sort of common practice across the world for many centuries. Giving thanks to a god following a successful or large harvest, victories in battle, end of droughts, etc. were pretty common, and many religious days were proclaimed to continue in pleasing of their saints. In North America, this was practiced by not only the early colonizers, but also the native inhabitants. Many native cultures had a long established tradition of expressing gratitude by sharing or giving away to struggling individuals. The first recorded Thanksgiving in the American colonies occurred back in the mid-16th century by both the Spanish and French in the region. The English colony of Jamestown rarely had them starting in 1607, but the one in 1621 by the Pilgrims is the most well-known example, albeit very whitewashed, and acts as the basis to the Thanksgiving that we have today. The Pilgrims had settled in land that once was held by the Patuxet tribe, a tribe that was largely wiped out due to smallpox and other European illnesses by the early 1600s. Those who remained were all kidnapped and sold as slaves back in Europe, or acted as slaves in the West Indies. By 1622, only one such man from the tribe still lived, an individual named Tisquantamon, otherwise known as Squanto. He had been kidnapped by English sailors in 1614 and sold as a slave back in Spain. He later managed to buy his freedom, where he went to England as a shipbuilder, and later managed to return to the New World in 1619. There, he discovered that his tribe had been wiped out by an epidemic, so he stood as the last Patuxet. When the Mayflower landed in 1620, Squanto worked to broker peaceful relations between the Pilgrims and the local Pocahontas, a native tribe that was housed all along Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and played a major part in getting them to meet in early 1621. He then lived with the Pilgrims for 20 months, acting as a translator, guide, and advisor. He introduced the settlers to the fur trade and taught them how to sow and fertilize native crops, which proved vital since the seeds which the Pilgrims had brought from England largely failed. Later, Squanto was relied on to pilot a ship of settlers on a trading expedition around Cape Cod and through dangerous shoals. During that voyage, however, Squanto contracted smallpox, which would eventually kill him days later. With the knowledge left to them, the Pilgrims celebrated at Plymouth for 3 days after the first harvest in 1621, with members of the Wampanoag tribe joining in as well. The specific date of this isn't exactly known, however many have speculated that it was around September the 29th, in combination with Michaelmas, a celebration of St. Michael's victory over Satan in the War of Heaven. Thus, it was deemed a religious holiday sanctioned by the Church. To the Puritans, a true Thanksgiving was a day of prayer and pious humiliation, thanking God for his special providence. Auspicious events such as the sudden ending of a war, drought, or pestilence might inspire a Thanksgiving proclamation. It was very much like having an extra Sabbath during the week. No, not that kind of Sabbath. Fasts and Thanksgivings never fell on a Sunday, and they were largely sanctioned by the Church. It wouldn't be until 2 years later, in 1623, that the governor of the colony, William Bradford, called for a Thanksgiving, making it a civil tradition in New England. It wouldn't be until 1637, though, that the first Thanksgiving Day was proclaimed by the then Massachusetts governor John Winthrop. He proclaimed such a Thanksgiving to celebrate the safe return of a band of armed hunters, all colonial volunteers. They had just returned from the journey to what is now Mystic, Connecticut, where they massacred 700 Pequot natives. Yeah, that's a bit of a trend in early Thanksgiving, hence a lot of the controversy. During the Revolutionary War, many national Thanksgivings were proclaimed in the colonies, the first being for the British defeat at Saratoga. From 1774 to 1789, the governing body of the US issued many Thanksgiving proclamations, and would later be continued by Presidents Washington and Adams during their 10 years. On January the 1st of 1795, Washington proclaimed a Thanksgiving Day to be observed on Thursday, February the 19th, and from that point on, it was to be proclaimed every year instead of being a set holiday. John Adams declared Thanksgiving in 1798 and 99, but Thomas Jefferson was a deist and a skeptic of the idea of divine intervention, so he did not declare any Thanksgiving days during his presidency. James Madison renewed the tradition in 1814 in response to a resolution of Congress, and declared two in 1815, neither in the autumn. Instead, many states' governors proclaimed the day of Thanksgiving, and many of them would be at separate times of the year, or even multiple ones during the year. And by 1850, almost every state and territory had their own Thanksgivings that they themselves proclaimed. Many people felt that this family holiday should be a national celebration, especially Sarah Josepha Hale, the influential editor of the women's magazine Goodly Lady's Book. In 1827, she began a campaign to reinstate the holiday after the model of the first presidents. She publicly petitioned several presidents to make it an annual event. Hale's efforts finally succeeded in 1863 when she was able to convince President Lincoln that a national Thanksgiving might serve to unite a war-torn nation. Lincoln declared two national Thanksgivings that year, one for August the 6th celebrating the victory at Gettysburg, and the second for the last Thursday in November. Neither Lincoln nor his successors, however, made the holiday a fixed annual event. A president still had to proclaim Thanksgiving each year, and the last Thursday in November became the customary date, which was held by a de facto holiday known as Evacuation Day, which celebrated the British withdrawal from the United States during the Revolution, and there stayed for some time. From this time as well is the somewhat comical pardoning of a turkey by the US president, as one of Lincoln's sons pleaded with him that the turkey had any right to life as anyone else. Thus, Lincoln pardoned the lovely bird, and likely ate it a week later. The Pilgrims and the Wampanoag were not particularly identified with Thanksgiving until about 1900, though interest in the Pilgrims as historic figures began shortly before the American Revolution. With the publication of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's best-selling poem, The Courtship of Miles Standish, and the recovery of Governor Bradford's lost manuscripts of Plymouth's Plantation, public interest in the Pilgrims grew just as Thanksgiving became nationally important. Until the third quarter of the 19th century, music, literature, and popular art concentrated on the Pilgrims' landing at Plymouth Rock, and their first encounters with the native people on Cape Cod. After 1890, representations of the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag began to reflect a shift in interest to the 1621 harvest celebration. By the beginning of the 20th century, the Pilgrims and the Thanksgiving holiday were used to teach children about American freedom and how to be good citizens, which to Americans meant slaughtering natives. Each November in classrooms across the country, students participated in Thanksgiving pageants, sang songs about Thanksgivings, and built log cabins to represent the homes of the Pilgrims. Thus, the overturned window of the Thanksgiving holiday started to shift. In 1939, President Franklin Roosevelt changed the Thanksgiving holiday to that of the second to last Thursday in November. He had hoped that doing so would grant merchants more time to sell goods before Christmas and boost the nation somewhat out of the Great Depression. At the time, it was deemed inappropriate to advertise for Christmas before Thanksgiving, and damn, only if that was true now. And so Roosevelt thought that giving them an extra week would aid in money passing through the economy, but this was hated so much by sections of the public that 18 states refused the change, and the law was changed back to the last Thursday in 1941. Congress would then fix the holiday as the fourth Thursday of November, which once every 7 years would be the second to last for the month. As the country became more urban and family members began to live further apart, Thanksgiving became a time to gather together. The holiday moved away from its religious roots to allow immigrants of every background to participate in a common tradition. Thanksgiving Day football games, beginning with Yale versus Princeton in 1876, enabled fans to add some rowdiness to the holiday. In the late 1800s, parades of costumed revealers became common, and in 1920, Gimbel's department store in Philadelphia staged a parade of about 50 people with Santa Claus at the rear of the procession. Since 1924, the annual Macy's Parade in New York City has continued the tradition. And today, it is an important holiday to some, but a tradition to virtually everyone in the United States. So one of the many tales of Thanksgiving finally comes to an end. I hope you enjoyed the brief look into yet another of the American holidays. If there's a topic that you'd like me to cover in the future, say so down in the comments below. And if you'd like to assist the channel in growing, then think about donating on my Patreon page. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.